There it is.
War in Iraq.
Let's get started.
We're in the early stages of military operations.
Growing up, the narrative was always oil. So it was like we went to Iraq to get oil, like America always does.
We might find ourselves without adequate supplies of energy in the future.
All major oil fields in the South are now under coalition control.
But that's kind of the lazy explanation. It's not quite it. Oil's a part of it, but it's not the main reason. We went to war in Iraq because several powerful American men wanted to. Some of them thought it was vital. We had to. Others just wanted to project American power. But either way, here we are 18 years later. Nearly 10,000 Americans dead, over 200,000 Iraqis dead, over $1 trillion tax dollars spent. And the result? A Middle East
Trillion tax dollars spent on Iraq alone, by the way. The total cost is $7 trillion since the beginning of the war on terror post 9/11 era. I think it was $7 trillion. It might be 8 by now. Like $7 trillion fucking 2 years ago. And that's a conservative estimate. Feel like there's TOS here. You should wait, let a mod check it first. Yeah, I think there might be TOS here. I'm welcoming Johnny into my home, but I feel like Johnny is gonna welcome TOS into my home. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a little worried. Hi, I saw on day 3 in the Pentagon. I found forced feminization vaccine. Do you want an early copy in your PO box? Let me know. Thank you, please.
that is less stable than ever, in part because of the US presence, and really because of it. How did this happen? I mean, I grew up and lived through this. I studied it as an undergrad, I studied it in grad school, and yet it's taken me until now to really take a hard look and to really understand exactly what happened. So this is how the US stole Iraq.
Saddam Hussein is a tyrant, a murderer, and a man who has started 2 wars. He is clearly someone who cannot be trusted or believed.
All right, so it's the night of 9/11. The country is reeling. Who did this terrible thing and why? How should the US respond? And it became clear very soon amongst intelligence and counterterrorism people that Al-Qaeda was behind it. This terrorist group that was mainly based in Afghanistan. Later that night, the night of 9/11, over at the Pentagon, which earlier that day had been hit by an airplane, a memo comes in from the Deputy Secretary of State. The memo is urgent. It's for the Defense Intelligence Agency, the people who spend their time doing all the intelligence for war and other defense purposes. And this memo tells the intelligence agents not to look into Al-Qaeda, the people they know did it, but instead to look into ways Iraq has been involved in terrorism for the previous decade. The intelligence agents who got this memo sort of scratched their head and were like, wait, what? What's going on here? These people were very familiar with the intel, and they knew that this attack had come from Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. Afghanistan is like more than 1,000 kilometers away from Iraq. It is a completely different place. They speak a different language. It has nothing to do with Iraq. Afghanistan and Iraq are totally different. We had just been attacked by Al-Qaeda, and yet the Deputy Secretary of Defense is asking for information about Iraq and its ties to terrorism. The person who sent this memo was the Deputy Secretary of State, Paul Wolfowitz, and he was just getting started. A few days after 9/11, the president gathers all of his top advisors out at his forest retreat right outside of Washington, D.C. They were there to discuss how to respond to these attacks. The focus of this discussion was, of course, Afghanistan. How do we retaliate against Al-Qaeda, this terrorist group that has been given sort of a safe haven by the government of Afghanistan? So they're sitting in some conference room in some lodge in this forest retreat, debating.
You might be wondering, like, what Paul Wolfowitz has been up to in the Trump administration. Well, let me tell you, he's writing Wall Street Journal opinion op-eds talking about how the Gulf War ended too soon. Bush was right not to go all the way to Baghdad, but he should have backed Shiite rebels in southern Iraq. So that's what he wrote in August the 12th, 2020. So that's what he's been up to. All of these people are war criminals, and they should be tried and potentially thrown into jail for the rest of their lives, if not worse ways to deal with them. But of course, instead we prop them up as liberal heroes.
Debating how they're going to retaliate against Al-Qaeda. And who pipes up again but this guy, Paul Wolfowitz, this time with the support of his boss, Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld. So Wolfowitz pipes up and he's like, you know, 9/11 was a pretty sophisticated attack. There's no way that this ragtag terror group of Al-Qaeda could have pulled it off all alone. They probably had help from Saddam in Iraq. And then Wolfowitz says that when it comes to global terrorism, Saddam is actually the head of the...
By the way, the irony is, like, now they're literally doing it with Iran. Well, they did it with Iran back then as well, which is hilarious because Iran literally helped the American intelligence communities fight against Al-Qaeda and the Sunni rebel groups that propped up in the aftermath of the destabilization in the region. And they have fought back against the... again, numerous other groups, including ISIS, in the region for a very long time because they are from a different sect. But of course, they considered Iran to be a part of the axis of evil alongside... they considered Iran to be a part of the axis of evil alongside fucking Al-Qaeda, which is very interesting, very weird. Along with Saddam Hussein, when there's literally no connection whatsoever. The only connection, as a matter of fact, that you could tie between like Al-Qaeda and fucking Iraq is literally an American person that, or an American-made head of terror that they propped up themselves.
Basically saying that Saddam is behind all of this. And everyone in the room is sort of like, what the hell is this guy talking about? Saddam Hussein is a really bad guy, but he's not the head of the snake of international terrorism. Like, what? All these people, these like very informed international like advisors. Oh man. After some astonished glances, the head of the Counterterrorism Center raises his hands and says, Mr. President, quote, we were attacked on 9/11 by Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. Saddam Hussein in Iraq has nothing to do with this. It's just like, I'm sorry. I feel like as an 8th grader at this time, I was asking these questions where I was like, is Iraq the same as Afghanistan? And here are like the leaders of our country having to explain that like Saddam Hussein has nothing to do with Afghanistan and Al-Qaeda. So this meeting at Camp David, they move on and they keep talking about these plans to bomb Al-Qaeda. But Paul Wolfowitz is stubborn and he does not give up. Later that day, there's a break in all of the meetings. It's like the afternoon. Attorney General John Ashcroft is playing the piano in this sort of lobby, and a few others were singing along these like piano spirituals that he's playing. Condoleezza Rice.
Guys, it's not because they're all brown. Racism is, or ignorance is actually an out for these people. No, it's not because they were all fucking brown. The justification for the common folk came from the fact that they're all brown. But the real reason why they wanted to do it was because of their actual interest in overtaking Iraq as well. Like, it's not because they were like, oh, they're all brown, so like, you know, I guess we could like, they're all brown, so they might be doing it. Like, no, they weren't like, oopsie, it's literally Saddam who's responsible for 9/11. They were like, no. This is the narrative that I want you, members of the intelligence community, to give back to me. That's why I'm sticking it in here over and over again. That it's Iraq, it's Saddam.
This is one of these people singing along. President Bush is sitting over by the fire. It's like this rustic cabin, it's all cozy. He's drinking a cup of coffee, and who cozies up to him at the fire but Paul Wolfowitz? And Bush is like, ugh, here we go again. So he's like, listen, check out my plan. Half of Iraq's people live either way up here, where they don't like Saddam, they're Kurds, they've been brutalized by Saddam, they do not like him, or they live way down here in the south, which is right near the border of our good friend Kuwait. We could easily come into Iraq and take both of these big population centers. Oh, and in doing so, says Paul Wolfowitz, we could naturally take the major oil fields in Iraq, thus cutting off Saddam from his main revenue source. Or, in other words, he said,
which is why the Ministry of Energy was the only ministry that they took over in the first day of the Iraqi invasion. Like, Department of Education, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Health, all these other fucking places were bombed to shit with the exception of the Ministry of Energy. Okay? That was left intact and completely controlled by the American allied forces. I wonder what the reason was for that.
That making Saddam, quote, the mayor of Baghdad. He would only have power in Baghdad. He would be cut off from the north and south of his country. In this moment, I can almost see George Bush's ears like literally perking up when he hears this last part about cutting off the oil supply. After all, Bush was a former Texas oil man, and he knew the importance of having access to oil. So this plan sort of intrigued Bush, and he literally said to Paul Wolfowitz, quote, "Why didn't you bring this up in the meeting?" And Wolfowitz is like, "Well, I didn't want to like step on the toes of my superiors." And Wolfowitz, we know you just wanted to cozy up against the president and plant the seed of how easy it would be to take over Iraq. So put yourself in George Bush's shoes for a second. Your country was just brutally attacked on your watch, and you are completely at a loss of what to do. There's no clear, easy target to retaliate against. After a day of meetings of sitting around trying to figure out how to retaliate, George Bush is realizing that retaliating against a tiny group of terrorists living in caves in Afghanistan is like trying to hit smoke with a baseball bat. Kind of impossible. What George Bush wanted and felt like he needed, and it turns out what a lot of American lawmakers also wanted, was a clear, decisive target. Not to try to hit smoke with a baseball bat, but a nice, solid hit. A home run. So I believe this day at Camp David, 4 days after 9/11, is when President Bush decided that he would find a way to invade Iraq. To make Americans and himself feel like he was...
By the way, not to foreshadow something really horrible, but if we inevitably do go to war with Iran and cite the fucking denuclearization agreement being thrown out as a cause, remember that every single person in my chat that has fucking come into this community routinely to say, oh, well, Iran actually destroyed the terms of the denuclearization agreement and they were developing nuclear weapons for a very long time, are all fucking liars and pieces of shit who, just like, or they're dupes themselves. Either they're literally working for the fucking State Department or they're just doing it for free because they're a bunch of liberal psychopaths. But again, remember that that is just as much a lie as the weapons of mass destruction were that ultimately became the justifying reason for invasion. Okay? And then 10 years down the line, we'll say, oh, well, oops, that was actually a lie. Oh, my God. That's crazy. Pieces of shit.
Was actually doing something definitive, like toppling dictators, as a rebuttal to the terrible attacks of 9/11. Even though Iraq had nothing to do with Al-Qaeda, he and his people around him would
you listen
find
to Blowback?
a way.
Noah is my friend, and you should listen to Blowback, but no, I'm not getting this information from Blowback.
Make a connection.
But I assume they talk about all this.
Terrorists, why not go in and get them?
Well, the evidence is pretty conclusive that the Iraqis have indeed harbored terrorists.
So over the next year, this seed that Paul Wolfowitz really planted and nourished in George Bush's mind starts to spread to everyone around him. And they start to find a way to...
The stuff about China from the same sources is true? Question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark. The stuff about China? What do you mean? Are you making a comparison to... are you making a comparison between Iraq, Iran, and China? Are you out of your fucking mind, dude? I mean, yes, the Western media does lie about China regularly. They do. And then there are things that they don't lie about China at all.
To sell the American public on this idea of war with Iraq. They get the British on board, and soon there's a full-blown debate which revolves around this story that Saddam has really big, terrible weapons.
Like, these fucking morons. Iran did violate the nuclear deal, though. No, they didn't. No, they didn't. You're a dumb bitch. You are either a silly bitch who is literally fucking fed this bullshit hook, line, and sinker from, I don't know, truthteller.eaglefuck.net, or you, I guess, work for the fucking State Department or something. Like, there's no other reason. Show me your pay stubs, or admit that you're a dumb fucking moron, because... if you look to third-party investigators, European Union investigators that also were looking at Iran, Iran was absolutely, without a fucking shred of a doubt, following on the terms of their denuclearization agreement. Okay? They were. even after the United States decided we are going to put sanctions on Iran, despite the fact that they are following on their terms of denuclearization. So shut the fuck up. God, bunch of fucking brain dead hogs, dude. So fucking horny for war. Yeah. The head of the international organization charged with monitoring Iran's compliance with the 2015 nuclear deal said Iran is meeting its obligations under the accord and warned against states trying to influence verification activities. But wait a minute. Yukiya Amano? Is he Chinese? Huh? He's looking Chinese or North Korean to me, brother. They're in on it. I'm too racist, so I can't tell them apart. Doesn't matter to me. Remember, my stupidity does not stop me from having an opinion on this conversation, brother. Can't trust him. He doesn't look white to me. He must be Antifa. Anyway.
And that he will likely give those...
By the way, the real argument isn't even that they weren't abiding by the nuclear denuclearization. Here is the fucking... Okay. Here's how you know when you're talking to a dumb fuck moron in the chat who's literally fucking fed the State Department propaganda hook, line, and sinker, but like didn't even read the entire talking points. So the real counter argument to that is, and at least more knowledgeable psychopathic neoliberals and those who want to engage in American imperialism, the real ones that have done the research at least don't say like, they weren't following the agreement, because like they very clearly were, and it wasn't the American authorities that were telling that were verifying this process. It was international authorities. So you just read the fucking headlines and you go along with that because you're a fucking idiot. If you were at least a little bit more knowledgeable than a disingenuous person, the least you could do is say, I don't know, that they were like state funders of terrorism or something. Or like even Donald Trump supporters know more than you, you dumb fucking piece of shit. Like even Donald Trump supporters know to say like, well, they were state funders of terrorism. And that's why we had to throw away the nuclear deal. You know what I mean? At least learn to, go beyond the headlines and give me a couple additional fucking line items. Okay? Iran has officially broken part of its commitment in the 2015 nuclear deal, following through on its months-long threat and further raising tensions with the United States. Oh, I wonder what time period that fucking talking point is from. I wonder when they fucking, when they left their commitment. They still left it after we ripped it apart, brother. They left it after we threw the deal on the ground, even though they were following the commitments, brother. They should have stayed on, even though we were giving them sanctions, brother. So fucking stupid.
Weapons to terrorists who will strike the United States in another 9/11 type attack, but way worse.
The debate about the war against Iraq has divided many along the political spectrum.
Real concern about this Russian war.
And Bush just kept saying weapons of mass destruction over and over again because he learned that short phrase.
Very dangerous weapons of mass destruction into this country.
But wait, hold on a second. Don't be fooled. The lead up to the Iraq War is often remembered as this robust debate about WMDs, weapons of mass destruction.
Saddam Hussein will continue to increase his capacity to wage biological and chemical warfare and will keep trying to develop nuclear weapons.
But I'm here to tell you that you need to think differently about it. The decision to go to war in Iraq was already made. It was made moments after 9/11, when a small group of powerful men imagined a glorious military campaign to liberate oppressed Iraqis and topple a dictator to make themselves and their country feel like we got a home run after we were attacked. From there, everything molded to fit that decision. Did Saddam Hussein have weapons of mass destruction? Did he want to give those to terrorists? No, there was no evidence. The little evidence there was...
Again, completely fabricated, no evidence whatsoever. And everyone in the media whipped up everybody else in the frenzy. And there were so many fucking morons who were like, nah, brother, you don't understand. They got weapons. They got WMDs, brother. We need to go in there, brother. Nope, totally made up. Same with the fucking Iran shit. Okay? Same exact bullshit with the Iran. International authorities saying there is no evidence that there are weapons of mass destruction in Iraq at the time. Doesn't matter to me, brother. I believe there's yellow cake. There's yellow cake. We need to do something about it. And again, same shit with fucking Iran now. Doesn't matter.
Threadbare and super speculative. But these guys turned into sort of like tea leaf readers, where you could look at the tea leaves and see whatever you need to support the decision that they made many months earlier. And it wasn't just these guys. Soon, this vision of toppling Saddam and having this American victory spread to the American Congress, Republicans and Democrats, who were also getting on board with this idea of America, a force for good, toppling the bad guy. It's a really wild study in human psychology. When you're a true believer in something, you really, really believe that you need to do something. Everything you see confirms what you want to believe or what you need to believe. We all do it, but it's just scary when our leaders are doing this, and they're doing it on beliefs and decisions that have deep ramifications for human suffering. So yeah, you can go over the debates and the intelligence and the back and forth on whether or not Saddam had weapons of mass destruction. It was all a show to help these people confirm what they already decided they wanted to do. So by the end, after weapons inspectors had done like 700 inspections and found no weapons, this group of guys eventually just start resorting to full-on lying. Dick Cheney gets up in a speech and says,
Simply stated, there is no doubt that Saddam Hussein now has weapons of mass destruction.
well, there was plenty of doubt. In fact, he simply stated there can be no evidence that Saddam has WMD, was the reality at the time. Even the Secretary of State, Colin Powell, who was totally against this fanciful vision of going and invading Iraq, even him eventually got on board, painstakingly getting in front of the UN and going over a bunch of thin or non-existent evidence and claiming that it was watertight.
My colleagues, every statement I make today is backed up by sources, solid sources. These are not assertions. What we're giving you are facts and conclusions based on solid intelligence.
Solid intelligence. No. These are words that Colin Powell has lived to regret for the rest of his life.
Aww.
A lot of people saw Colin Powell as like the one sane guy in the room. And so here at the UN, when he's drinking the Kool-Aid and backing this intelligence, a lot of people got on board. By October 10th, 2002, the US Congress was fully on board. Almost all the Republicans in the chamber, as well as a sizable group of Democrats, voted to authorize the U.S. to use force against Iraq.
Senate Joint Resolution 45 to authorize the use.
Wait, who was one of the leading Democrats aside from Hillary Clinton that was spearheading that effort? Well, Hillary Clinton lost, so she couldn't become president, but oh, that's right. It was Joseph Robinette Biden.
Use of United States armed forces against Iraq.
He has said he wants the power to be able to go to war. It seems completely consistent with that request that we say, yes, Mr. President, you have that power to go to war.
This resolution gives President the authority he needs to confront the threat posed by Iraq.
Saddam Hussein and his sons must leave Iraq within 48 hours.
And then it happened.
Sirens went off in Baghdad just a few minutes ago. An air raid is in progress over Baghdad.
Explosions in Baghdad.
Our nation enters this conflict reluctantly.
Come on, bro. Reluctantly, bro. Look, they're welcoming us as liberators, folks. The fucking boys, dude. They're welcoming us, dude. They love us. They're so happy that we're there liberating. Called the pro-democracy movement. Mission accomplished, folks.
2 months after the invasion, George Bush gives a speech on an aircraft carrier with this giant sign that says, quote,
Wallah, bro, look, I am Iranian, bro. I'm telling you right now, MEK, bro, #1. We love MEK, bro. America, bless my nation, bro. We love it, bro. Same shit. Same energy with the fucking, at the time, people being like, well, we found this Iraqi guy who suspiciously will become, I don't know, fucking mayor or some shit later down the line to say that they are welcoming Americans as liberators.
Quote, mission accomplished.
That is a real, yeah, this is a
the
very
type
famous,
of thing Bush surely was dreaming about while he
that was a very famous fucking moment. Mission accomplished 2 months in.
Sitting by the fire at Camp David, drinking coffee, listening to Paul Wolfowitz explain the plan to take over Iraq. Big, triumphant America just toppled the dictator. Mission accomplished. But this is the part of the story when all of the dreams, the fantasies, the visions of glory start to topple. Mission accomplished was really mission just beginning.
Bro, that's crazy.
One of the first things that the US did when they took over Baghdad was they dissolved the huge Iraqi military. They just said, no, we don't want you anymore, all of you commanders and leaders, soldiers, you're out. We're going to start fresh. In typical simplistic thinking of these visionary leaders, the idea was that doing so would allow them to start totally fresh with a new army completely rid of any sort of influence of Saddam Hussein. So now you have a bunch of ex-Iraqi army members who
This is really good analysis, by the way. It is surprisingly good. Like, I don't usually expect like, with obvious exceptions, but what he's talking about with the dissolution of the armed forces and how they literally ended up having no fucking infrastructure, no future opportunities whatsoever, and a fuckload of guns that they had hidden away, turning into ISIS and turning into like radical like militant groups is
are angry at the United States and unemployed. Oh, and all of them have extensive military experience.
There is
Johnny
a
has
large
a degree in
number
Middle East
of
politics. I mean, who cares?
former Iraqi soldiers that are unemployed now.
He's right.
That is a
like
huge
100%
concern.
right.
It is just painful. What a terrible decision. So these guys run off and they start to join the growing number of rebel groups that are there cropping up to oppose the United States presence. One of those groups is called Al-Qaeda in Iraq, which later turns into the Islamic State of Iraq, which eventually becomes the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, or ISIS, a well-oiled governmental and military organization run by many of the military leaders who were ousted by the Americans from the Iraqi military when they took over Baghdad.
Oops.
So Iraq turns into the US trying to fight this growing rebellion. Billions of dollars turns into tens of billions of dollars, and then hundreds of billions of dollars, and eventually crossing over into over $1 trillion of taxpayer money to fight this unnecessary war. Saddam Hussein was a really bad guy. He committed mass genocide against his own people, the Kurds. He executed many others, imprisoned many others. All in all, the number of dead.
Never mind. I was worried that there was going to be blood there. There was no blood.
Saddam Hussein's hands. Numbers around 250,000, according to Human Rights Watch. That was over 25 years of his brutal regime. And yet, in just 8 years of this war that the US started in Iraq, way more people were killed. A power vacuum was opened up that allowed ISIS to thrive. And for what? Why did we do this?
Nah, bro, you don't get it, bro. We had to do it, bro. Come on, bro. Just please, bro. Just don't ask questions. Bro, come on. We just got to do a little bit of that fucking war shit, brother. Come on, brother. We got to do it for freedom. Just don't ask questions, bro. Come on, bro. We got oil out of it, bro. We sold weapons to both sides of the conflict, bro. We're still fucking doing democracy, baby. Who cares, bro? Come on, bro. I mean, on top of that, it's like I finished daddy's job as well. The job that daddy started, bro. Come on, dude. Come on, brother. You don't understand it. So good. It's so fucking good.
How was this worth it? I really believe that in the aftermath of those towers falling, this group of guys began constructing a story for themselves, a fantasy. One not grounded in real facts from intelligence, but one grounded in fear, in a desire to be the hero, in the messianic complex that always infects the powerful. That fantasy trickled down and spread to other people in power.
I think this is the only part of that I don't agree with, where it's like, it's not like ideological, or it's not pure ideology, but his counter is like pure ideology. I think it's literally, it's money. It's what America's biggest jobs program, America's biggest government jobs program is the U.S. military, and America's most important sector is the military-industrial complex. Like, that's it. That's why we benefit tremendously from natural resource extraction. We benefit from keeping the Middle East as destabilized as possible because of our most important allies there. They benefit from that. There are too many reasons to invade Iraq and fuck that entire region up and continue on our war. Also, the other reason is fucking Halliburton, man.
Leading us into one of the most catastrophic and unnecessary wars in modern history.
I challenge the president or whoever has us here for 15 months to ride alongside me. I'll do another 15 months if he comes out here and rides along with me every day for 15 months.
Oof, Saddam Hussein, George Bush, Paul Wolfowitz. What a story. What a story. Yeah. Anyway, I want to thank the sponsor of the video today, ExpressVPN, which is a service I've used for years. When I traveled, I would use it all the time to basically route
so in my previous video about the short squeeze of GameStop by Wall Street Bets, I really explained what short sales are, but I didn't give you enough explanation about what a short squeeze actually is technically. I apologize for that. And in this video, I'm going to give you a 30-minute explanation.
This was a really good video, by the way. This was a really good video from Johnny. Shouts out to Johnny. He's killing it. Great. I'm glad I welcomed him. I'm glad I welcomed him
as an FBI
into our homes.
Now, if you short a stock, you basically lend shares. You sell these shares, wait for the share price to drop, buy back your shares, and return it to the lender